Hey guys, coming at you live this morning with a new tutorial showing off how I do the speckled highlighting effects around the highlights on my skin tones. And to show an example of that, I got a cover here that I did last week. And you'll notice that amongst all this detail and carnage, if you go in really closely to the highlights of the skin tones, you'll see that there's kind of this speckled dotted effect right here. And a lot of people think that you just use a brush for doing that, and that's close, but there's a couple other steps involved as well so that you ensure better control and better blending from your highlights on the skin tones to the midtones. So let's close this, and I'm going to start out with this. It's just a basic skin ball, and I'm just going to start out by just giving it some really basic shading. So I set the brush mode to screen, and I set it to a feather brush, turn down my opacity a fair bit, and then I just make a couple hits like that, and then there we go, just a nice rough little skin ball like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Quick Mask tool. The Quick Mask can be accessed here on your tools, or you can press Q as a shortcut to trigger it. And you'll notice that you'll turn on the Quick Mask, and what happens is your layer highlight turns into this light gray, and that your foreground colors turn into this black and white. So if I were to press Q again to turn it off, you'll see it's blue and normal foreground colors, and then press Q again. And what this is doing is that the Quick Mask allows me to affect the alpha channel of a certain selection. So just to do a quick demonstration, if I were to select an area like this, just kind of this blobby shape like that, you can move the selection, but you can't really affect the selection with the brush tool. Well, you can with Quick Mask. So when I press Q again, everything is red on the outside except the area that I had selected. So that means that I could use something like the brush tool, and I just set it to normal here, 100%. And I can just carve away certain areas of the Quick Mask right there. So when I press Q again, all those areas that I brushed in are now outside of the selection. So then if I were to do something like paint around inside here, it won't go outside like that. And that's the principle we're going to be working with here. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to press Control D to deselect all that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my brushes really quickly here to just create a bunch of little speckling and little dots around the side right here where the highlight's going to be here. So I'm going to turn on my Quick Mask. So I'm going to press Q. I'm going to access my brush listing, and I got this brush here that I want to use. It's called Freckles. It's just, two dots like that. And then I'm going to, let's here, set my foreground color to, black, like that. Set it to normal. And it's going to be a little bit hard to see because the brush is so small, but you'll start to see that all these dots just start appearing where my highlight's going to be as I'm just moving it around like that. And that's what I want. So if I were to zoom in really closely, you'll see I got all these little dots and stuff right here. So let's zoom out of here. And then if I were to turn off my Quick Mask by pressing Q, you'll see that everything except those dots are now selected. So what I want to do is I want to invert this selection so that the dots are selected. So I'm going to press Select, Inverse, so Shift Control I right here. And so now all my dots are selected. So if I were to press Q again on my Quick Mask, you'll see that instead of all the areas being red where the dots were, they're now transparent, and the red is now around the sphere like that. So with all that selected, I'm going to press Control H to hide my selection. I'm going to select my brush. I'm going to set my brush to just a default feather brush like that. I'm going to set its mode to linear dodge because I'm going to be making it into a highlight. I'm going to turn down its opacity nice and low, 10% flow, about like that, to 17%. And now you'll start to see what happens when I start hitting it like this with a highlight, is that now all those dots that I had selected are now kind of mapping out this highlight that I'm making here. So then, if I were to press Control H to unhide my selection, and then press Control D to deselect all of it, now I can, paint wherever I want because everything's deselected. So I can go back into this, select kind of a hard edge brush like that, turn it up, and then I can just add in, a little more intense highlights like that. So without explaining it, when I can just do it straightforward, here's how fast I can do it. I'll just do it a couple more times. So I press Q to access the quick mask. I access my brush like this. Select the freckles brush that I had, set it to normal, 100%, like that. I have that, and then I can also just press Control I while I have quick mask active to just invert the quick mask like that. And then I'm going to press Q, and then I'm going to access my brush, set it to that, and let's go with kind of a bluish rim light like that. And let's hide it, turn down my opacity to 30%, set the brush mode to linear dodge, and then there we go. That's pretty much all that there is to it. This doesn't just apply to skin tones as well. You can also apply this effect to a number of other effects and texture brushes. So let's say that you have something like a metallic ball. So I'll just render a metal ball here really quick, just something a little bit rudimentary like this, using a bunch of techniques and stuff for another tutorial on another day. Got our highlight like that right there, and then just a couple reflective passes like that. Alright, so if you were to have something like a metallic ball like this, but you wanted to add like little scratches and stuff that were visible around the highlights, you would do the same thing. So you would access your quick mask by pressing Q, and then use your brush, and then I'm going to use this right here. So I have this scratches brush right here. And let's reduce the size of it. Set our brush mode to normal, 100%, and we're just going to cut away like that right there. So now I got these scratches and stuff like that. And then going to invert the selection, so Control I, just like that. Going to press Q to turn off the quick mask. And now I got kind of this jumbled mess of highlight right here, so I'm going to press Control H to hide it. I'm going to select my brush, large like that. So a large feathered brush like so. Turn my opacity down to, let's go to 15%. And there we go. You'll see that now these scratches start to appear in the surface of whatever object I'm working on right here. So by doing that, you're able to create a number of texture effects. So I can show off a couple here. So for instance, on the leg right here, I have it done so that got the speckles around there. On the grass, I've done a similar thing where I used a grass brush to cut away at the quick mask. So here's where it's really visible. Where I'd cut away at the quick mask and then use a dark brush set to multiply to kind of shade behind it. Or you can also use it for stuff like metal right here. So I use kind of a scratchy brush, a scratch grunge brush, to create that metal effect right there. But where it's most apparent would be on the skin tones right here. So this is where it can be best applied. So anyway, hope that this was helpful and that this kind of helps you figure out some new ways to render out texture and surfaces on your future endeavors. So best of luck to you. Bye bye.